The Kitselas Canyon, the unceded traditional territory of the Kitselas, the people of the canyon. The Kitselas Canyon is located approximately 150 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean, following the Skeena River. The Skeena is the lifeline to several nations and villages along its path through northern British Columbia. The Kitselas recognized the abundance of salmon that passed through the narrow canyon, and it influenced their decision to locate villages there. For 5,000 years, the Kitselas lived at the canyon until the abandonment of the villages after the smallpox epidemic of the 1860s. Over the passage of time, what remained in the villages were either removed from the site or slowly disintegrated, returning to nature and leaving behind a moss-covered archaeological footprint. All discoveries of these mighty villages were to be found via excavation. Or so they thought. When you adjust your perception, you can see the volumes of knowledge, skills, and ingenuity left at the canyon. From the top of the canopy to the forest floor, there are signs of wealth, health, and security. This is the forest garden of Kitselas Canyon, where for thousands of years, the Kitselas tended a large-scale, complex, and efficient cultivation of plants for food and medicine. And its rediscovery is shifting the colonial narrative. When the first academics visited the Kitselas Canyon, they called the Kitselas hunter-gatherers, meaning they survived on what they could. Viewed through their colonial lens, they could only compare the lands of the Kitselas to their lands in their society, and that narrow perception completely missed how sophisticated and knowledgeable the people of the canyon actually were. And we're not alone.
The term forest garden comes from it's borrowed from a few different areas. So Annabelle Ford has done a lot of work with forest gardens in Maya context. And we see this kind of perennial forest management happening, not just in Central America, but also in parts of Northeast India, in South Africa. Globally, people were managing forests in a way that kind of balanced things like food productivity, but also biodiversity, right? We see that you don't have to completely destroy an ecosystem to get food, or it maybe destroys a strong word, but it doesn't have to result in a net turnover in species. You can manage a forest in a way that just kind of helps things along. You allow, you can clear an area and whatever comes back, whether that's hazelnut, crabapple, Saskatoon berries, soap berries, you can kind of select as the forest goes through its successional phases. And so that's a common thread we see globally, that people are managing forests in this way, where they're kind of working with the system.
We're visiting the garden in the spring. You have to imagine how lush and full of life this area will be in the summer months. An abundance of fruit, nuts, medicines, and root vegetables are found here, and it's not by accident or coincidence. This was a carefully managed area, and again, the garden holds all the clues. Only the plants originally planted in this garden will grow in this soil. It is different from other areas in the Kitselas Canyon. Soil studies provide support that the garden maintenance was complex and unique.
You see, we have something very dark, and that's the very indication of the recycling of the biomass in the system through controlled wildfire, through a recycling of wood pieces in the system, charcoal, fish bones from the river. So you see that's a very closing circularity of nutrients in the system, and we are observing this signature fingerprint in the soil of this very innovative human ecosystem interactions, marriage that exists here in Kitselas.
The Kitselas gardeners were gifted. They understood how to create, care for, protect the plants. They understood the seasonality of different plants, and they knew the garden would attract big game. They knew how to plan, and their work fed hundreds of people each year for thousands of years. It's an exciting rediscovery.
Been working with her in the forest gardens for the past probably 4 or 5 years. And it's just an amazing opportunity to understand what our people did years and years ago.
History is being rewritten, and it's being written as our story. The rediscovery of the Kitselas Forest Garden shifts the paradigm from the colonial view to a sustainable relationship with forest plants that highlights the place-based knowledge of the Kitselasu and how their cultivation helped to create food security for the village.
Our ancestors knew what to grow, not only for them and their children to eat, but how to attract wildlife so that they could hunt on our territory lands, and we were able to trade to get other things that we needed in with the food that we gathered and with everything we harvested, which is where the rice root came from, was through trading with other nations. Like, we had connections, and I don't think there was any times where they wondered what they were going to have for dinner or how they were going to eat in the next upcoming days. Like, they knew how to thrive, not just survive.
150 years ago, this part of Kitselas territory would have been bare. No evergreen trees. That's how large the forest garden of the Kitselas Canyon was. As they did hundreds of years ago, our ancestors are finally passing their knowledge to future generations, teaching us through the wealth of information remaining in the Kitselas Forest Garden. As plans are made to recreate a forest garden in the Kitselas community of Gitas.
So recreating a forest garden from the soil up, it will be about examining all these different pieces that go together to make this synergistic whole of what a forest garden is. So we can look at all those different pieces and fully understand what makes it, how it grows, and how to maintain it. So it really is about understanding the process and reawakening the energy and the process of taking care of that system. It's really about asserting, food sovereignty on traditional territory.
Food sovereignty, security, and sustainability. Forest Garden is all three, and it's time to update the narrative, to recognize and respect the vast amount of knowledge, skills, ingenuity, and commitment of the people who built and maintained this garden for thousands of years.